Deep within NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center at 3:47 a.m., Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the impossible data streaming from the James Webb telescope. The cosmic microwave background, the universe's oldest light, wasn't random. Hidden within its ancient patterns was something that made her blood run cold, a repeating sequence that appeared every 72 million light-years across the observable universe. Sarah wasn't just any astrophysicist. She was the architect of the quantum analysis algorithms that had cracked this cosmic code, technology she'd developed in secret after losing her team in a mysterious observatory incident 5 years ago. An incident she'd never spoken about. An incident involving signals that weren't supposed to exist. Now those same impossible patterns were everywhere, woven into the fabric of space-time itself like a vast, ancient grid. If her calculations were correct, these weren't natural formations, they were markers. Beacons placed before the first stars were born, before galaxies formed, before anything should have existed to create them. The universe wasn't empty when it began. Something else was already here, waiting, watching, building. But what could exist before existence itself? Sarah's fingers trembled as she adjusted the display parameters, hoping the patterns would dissolve into statistical noise. Instead, they became sharper, more defined. The sequence repeated with mathematical precision across billions of years and trillions of miles, a cosmic fingerprint that defied every law of physics she knew. The lab hummed with the white noise of cooling systems and processing units, but the silence felt oppressive. Sarah was alone with a discovery that would either reshape humanity's understanding of the universe or destroy her career the way it had 5 years ago at Mount Palomar. She still woke up sometimes hearing the screams from that night. The radio telescope had picked up a signal buried in gamma-ray bursts from the Vela pulsar. Dr. Martinez had been the first to notice the pattern, how it seemed to respond to their observations, growing stronger the longer they watched. Then came the headaches, the nightmares, the way the signal began appearing in their equipment, even when the telescope wasn't pointed at Vela anymore. The official report blamed equipment failure and stress-induced psychosis. 3 team members were institutionalized. 2 others disappeared entirely. Sarah survived only because she'd been running diagnostics in the basement when the main observation deck suffered what the investigators called a catastrophic electrical failure. They found her colleagues days later, catatonic, their notebooks filled with the same sequence of numbers written over and over until their pens tore through paper. Now that same sequence stared back at her from the cosmic microwave background, magnified across the entire observable universe. Sarah pulled up her encrypted files from that night, cross-referencing the Vela signal with the new Webb data. The correlation was undeniable. What they'd detected 5 years ago wasn't an isolated anomaly. It was a small piece of something vast and ancient that had been embedded in reality itself since the moment of cosmic inflation. Her secure terminal chimed with an incoming message. Dr. Elena Vasquez from the European Space Agency, part of the Webb collaboration team. Sarah's stomach dropped as she read the timestamp. Elena had sent this 47 minutes ago, meaning she'd discovered something around 3 a.m. as well. Sarah, I know we haven't spoken since Palomar, but I'm seeing patterns in the CMB data that match your old research. The frequency harmonics are identical. I'm at ESA headquarters running verification protocols, but I think we both know what this means. Call me immediately. Something is activating the grid. Sarah's chair creaked as she leaned back, staring at the ceiling tiles. Elena had been part of the Palomar team, one of the 2 who'd vanished after the incident. For 5 years, Sarah had assumed her colleagues were either dead or so damaged they'd never surface again. But here was Elena, apparently functional enough to hold a position with ESA, and she'd found the patterns too. The implications crashed over Sarah like ice water. If the cosmic microwave background contained deliberate patterns, then something had been actively manipulating space-time during the universe's formation. The cosmic web itself, the largest structures in existence, might be artificial constructs. Every galaxy, every star, every planet could be part of an incomprehensibly vast machine built by entities that existed before time itself. Sarah reached for her secure phone, then stopped. The last time she'd shared this type of discovery, her team had paid the price. But if Elena was right about the grid activating, staying silent might be far more dangerous than speaking up. Outside her window, the first hints of dawn painted the Maryland sky pale grey. In 12 hours, the day shift would arrive, and Dr. Chen would need to decide whether to present her findings to the Webb team or bury them like she'd done before. The patterns pulsed gently on her screen, waiting with the patience of entities that had orchestrated reality for nearly 14 billion years. Whatever had built this cosmic infrastructure wasn't finished with its work, and somehow Sarah suspected it had been waiting specifically for humanity to develop the technology to see it. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Dr. Sarah Chen barely noticed as she stared at the holographic display floating above her desk. The patterns seemed to pulse with their own rhythm, defying every law of physics she'd spent 15 years studying. Outside her office window at the Goddard Space Flight Center, dawn was breaking over Maryland, painting the sky in shades of amber that reminded her uncomfortably of the anomalous data. She rubbed her eyes and leaned back in her chair, the leather creaking in the pre-dawn silence. The cleaning crew had finished their rounds, and the only sounds were the distant hum of servers and the occasional whisper of air through the ventilation system. Perfect conditions for losing one's mind, she thought grimly. The data from the James Webb telescope had arrived 3 days ago as part of routine deep-field observations. What should have been standard cosmic background radiation readings instead showed something impossible, a structured pattern embedded in light that had traveled for 13.8 billion years, born in the universe's infancy when the first atoms were forming. Sarah pulled up the spectrographic analysis for the 100th time. The pattern was subtle, so subtle that it had taken the most advanced algorithms to extract it from the noise. But once isolated, its artificial nature was undeniable. The probability of such organization occurring naturally was so small that her computer had simply displayed it as 0. A secure phone buzzed. The caller ID showed Dr. Marcus Webb, director of the Astrophysics Division, calling from his home number at 5:30 in the morning. Sarah's stomach dropped. "Tell me you haven't slept either." Webb's gravelly voice carried the weight of exhaustion and something else. Fear. "I've been running verification protocols all night. Marcus, this thing, pack it up, everything. You're being transferred to a secure facility in Colorado. Transportation leaves Andrews in 2 hours." Sarah felt the world tilt slightly. "What? Marcus, what's going on? This is still preliminary analysis. We haven't even—" "Sarah." His voice cut through her protests with uncharacteristic sharpness. "At 11:47 last night, SETI confirmed they've been tracking similar patterns for the past 6 months. They classified it above my clearance level and kicked it to the Pentagon. Whatever you've found, it's bigger than cosmic background radiation." The line went quiet except for the sound of Webb's breathing. Sarah stared at her screens, where the impossible patterns continued their ancient dance. 6 months. SETI had known for 6 months and said nothing. "How many people know about this?" she asked. "On our end? You, me, and the 2 graduate students who ran the initial data processing. They're being briefed as we speak. Sarah, I need you to understand something. What we're dealing with here, it's not just about astrophysics anymore. If this pattern is artificial, if something created it—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The implications crashed over Sarah like a wave. If an intelligence had embedded a message in the cosmic background radiation, it meant that intelligence existed when the universe was only 380,000 years old, before the first stars, before galaxies, before anything resembling the cosmos they understood. "This is insane," she whispered. "Pack light. And Sarah, don't discuss this with anyone. Not your family, not your colleagues, no one." The line went dead. Sarah sat in the growing daylight, surrounded by data that apparently posed a threat to national security. She thought about calling her sister in California, making some excuse about a sudden work trip, but Webb's warning echoed in her mind. Instead, she began methodically copying her analysis onto encrypted drives. As she worked, details she'd overlooked began to emerge from the data. The pattern wasn't random. It had structure, repetition, mathematical relationships that suggested language or code. More disturbing still, it seemed to be changing, evolving with an almost organic quality that made her skin crawl. Her computer chimed softly. A new analysis protocol had finished running, one she'd set up to search for similar patterns in archived data from other deep space observations. The results made her hands shake. The pattern appeared in datasets going back decades. Hubble had detected fragments of it. Radio telescopes had picked up echoes. Even the Cosmic Background Explorer from the 1990s had captured pieces, but the technology hadn't been sophisticated enough to recognize what it was seeing. Whatever had left this message had been trying to get their attention for a very long time. Sarah's office door opened without a knock. Two men in dark suits entered, their faces professionally blank. The taller one displayed a badge she couldn't quite read in the dim light. "Dr. Chen, we're here to escort you to Andrews Air Force Base. Please gather your materials." As she packed her drives and research notes, Sarah took one last look at the holographic display. The pattern seemed almost alive now, writhing through space and time, carrying a message that predated the Earth by billions of years. She wondered if decoding it would be humanity's greatest discovery or its final mistake. The message consumed Sarah's every waking moment. 3 days had passed since her initial discovery, and she hadn't left the lab once, surviving on vending machine coffee and whatever takeout Marcus brought her. The cosmic background radiation data sprawled across multiple monitors, each screen displaying different frequency analyses of the impossible pattern. "You look like hell," Marcus said, setting down a steaming container of Thai food. Dark circles shadowed his eyes too. He'd been running interference with department heads while Sarah worked, deflecting questions about their extended use of the telescope array. "It's beautiful," Sarah whispered, her fingers dancing across the holographic display suspended before her. The pattern rotated slowly, its mathematical elegance becoming more apparent with each iteration of her analysis. "Look at this fractal structure. It's nested, layer within layer. Every time I think I've found the bottom, there's another level of complexity." Marcus pulled up a chair beside her, studying the swirling representation of ancient light. "Any luck with the translation protocols?" "That's just it. I don't think it needs translation. The mathematics is universal: prime numbers, geometric constants, fundamental physical relationships. Whoever embedded this knew that any sufficiently advanced civilization would recognize these patterns." Sarah highlighted a section of the data. "See this? It's not just pi to 1,000 decimal places, it's pi modified by the fine structure constant, then integrated with the golden ratio. They're showing us they understand the deep structure of reality." "They?" Marcus leaned back in his chair. "You really think this came from an intelligence?" "Yes." Sarah's voice carried absolute certainty. "But that's not even the strangest part." She pulled up another display, this one showing temporal analysis. The pattern isn't just embedded in the cosmic background radiation, it's woven into the fundamental structure of space-time itself. This message was placed there at the moment of cosmic inflation, 13.8 billion years ago. The implications hung between them like a physical presence. Marcus struggled to wrap his mind around the concept. "You're saying something intelligent existed before our universe began? Or outside it? Or both?" Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she manipulated the data. She'd been running on adrenaline and caffeine for too long, but she couldn't stop. Every new analysis revealed deeper layers of meaning. The mathematical relationships suggest a civilization with complete mastery over the fundamental forces. They didn't just observe the Big Bang, they had a hand in orchestrating it. Marcus stood abruptly, pacing to the window overlooking the campus. Ordinary students walked ordinary paths. oblivious to the cosmic revelation unfolding above their heads. "We need to contact someone. NASA, the ESA, the Nobel Committee. This is bigger than—" "No." Sarah's sharp tone stopped him mid-sentence. "Not yet. Something's wrong with the pattern. There's a discontinuity I can't explain." She highlighted a section where the mathematical elegance seemed to stutter, creating an asymmetry that shouldn't exist. It's like a glitch, but too deliberate to be random corruption. She enhanced the anomalous region, running it through every cryptographic algorithm she could access. Hours passed in focused silence, broken only by the soft hum of computers and Marcus's increasingly worried glances at his colleague. Then the pattern shifted. Sarah watched in stunned silence as the discontinuity resolved itself into something new: coordinates. Not just spatial coordinates, but temporal ones as well, pointing to a specific location in space and a specific moment in time. "It's responding," she breathed. "The pattern is dynamic. It knew when we were ready for the next level." Marcus leaned over her shoulder, reading the display. "Those coordinates, they're pointing to the outer edge of our solar system. And the timestamp—" His face went pale. "That's tomorrow." Sarah's mind raced through the implications. The message hadn't just been waiting for any civilization to find it. It had been waiting for humanity, specifically. The coordinates were calibrated to our astronomical reference frame, the timestamp to our perception of time. Whoever had embedded this cosmic signature had known 13.8 billion years ago exactly when and how humanity would discover it. "There's something else," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. She enhanced a final section of the pattern, revealing a new layer of complexity that made her blood freeze. The message contains blueprints, technical specifications for some kind of device. The schematics were unlike anything in human technology, based on principles of physics that their science had only theorized. But the mathematics was unambiguous. This was a communication array, designed to establish contact across impossible distances. Marcus gripped the back of her chair. Contact with what? Before Sarah could answer, every screen in the lab went black. For a moment, they sat in darkness, broken only by emergency lighting. Then the displays flickered back to life, showing a single message in simple English text: "Construction must begin immediately. They are coming." The words pulsed once, then vanished, leaving only the original cosmic pattern rotating innocently in the holographic display. But Sarah knew everything had changed. The universe was no longer a vast, empty stage where humanity played out its brief drama. It was something far more complex and far more dangerous. Outside the window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red that reminded her uncomfortably of distant dying stars. The data streams cascaded down Sarah's monitors like digital waterfalls, each line of code representing millions of years of cosmic history. She'd been at her desk for 16 hours straight, surviving on coffee and the electric thrill of discovery. The message hidden in the cosmic microwave background wasn't just a pattern, it was a sophisticated mathematical sequence that defied everything she knew about the early universe. "Still here, Chen?" Dr. Marcus Webb, the project director, appeared in her doorway with 2 steaming cups. His usually pristine lab coat was wrinkled, suggesting he'd been pulling long hours too. "The pattern's evolving," Sarah said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Look at this." She pulled up a 3-dimensional visualization of the data. The cosmic background radiation transformed into a swirling galaxy of information. What we initially thought was a simple geometric sequence is actually nested. There are layers upon layers of meaning. Marcus leaned closer, his breath fogging her secondary monitor. "Jesus, it's like a Russian doll made of mathematics." More than that. Sarah's fingers danced across her keyboard, isolating specific data segments. "I've been running it through every decryption algorithm I can find. The outermost layer appears to be written in prime numbers, a universal mathematical constant that any intelligent species would recognize." The visualization shifted, highlighting nodes of data that pulsed with soft blue light. Each pulse corresponded to a prime number in the sequence, creating a rhythm that seemed almost musical. "But here's where it gets interesting," Sarah continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Once you strip away that outer layer using the prime sequence as a key, what's underneath follows the golden ratio. Then beneath that, Fibonacci sequences. It's like whoever sent this message was providing us with a roadmap to decode it, assuming we'd recognize these mathematical universals." Marcus set down his cup with trembling hands. "Whoever sent it. Sarah, you're talking about a signal that's existed since the cosmic microwave background was formed. That's nearly 14 billion years ago. Before Earth, before our solar system, before anything we thought could exist," Sarah finished. She turned in her chair to face him directly. "Marcus, I've checked and rechecked the data. This isn't some equipment malfunction or interference. The signal is embedded in the fundamental structure of space-time itself, imprinted when the universe was only 380,000 years old. The implications hung in the air between them like a live wire." Sarah pulled up another screen showing her progress through the nested layers of the message. She'd successfully decoded 3 levels, each revelation more staggering than the last. "What does it say?" Marcus asked, though his tone suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Sarah highlighted a section of translated text. "The first layer is a greeting of sorts. Mathematical proofs that demonstrate the sender's understanding of universal constants. Pi, the fine structure constant. It's like they're establishing their credentials. And the second layer? Coordinates." Sarah's mouse hovered over a complex star chart that had materialized from the decoded data. Not just any coordinates, but a 3-dimensional map of local galaxy clusters as they existed 13 billion years ago. The precision is incredible. It shows stellar formations that we've only recently discovered with the Webb telescope. Marcus studied the star map, his face pale. "You said 3 layers. What's the third?" Sarah hesitated. This was where the discovery had shifted from miraculous to terrifying. "It's a warning, Marcus, or at least, I think it is. The mathematics are more complex than anything in the outer layers, but I've managed to decode fragments." She opened a new window showing her translation attempts. Scattered phrases emerged from the mathematical chaos. Great silence approaches and preservation protocol initiated, and most chilling of all, final archive. "The message keeps referring to something called the Watchers," Sarah continued. "Based on the context, I believe the senders were trying to preserve information before some kind of cosmic catastrophe. They encoded their knowledge in the cosmic microwave background because it's the most persistent signal in the universe. It exists everywhere, and it will exist until the heat death of everything." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring at the alien mathematics flowing across the screens. "How many more layers are there?" "I estimate at least 12 more, Sarah replied. "Each one exponentially more complex than the last. At my current rate of progress, it could take months to decode everything, assuming I don't hit any dead ends." "We need to bring in more people," Marcus said. "Cryptographers, linguists, mathematicians." "No." The sharpness in Sarah's voice surprised them both. "Not yet. Marcus, if this message contains what I think it does, advanced technology, cosmic history, warnings about universe-scale threats, we need to understand what we're dealing with before we open Pandora's box." Outside the laboratory, dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. But for Sarah, looking at her monitors filled with billion-year-old alien mathematics, the world had already changed forever. The universe was no longer empty. It was a vast library, and humanity had just learned to read its first words. The coffee had long since gone cold in Sarah's cup, but she barely noticed. Her eyes burned from staring at the screens, tracking the delicate dance of algorithms as they stripped away layer after layer of cosmic interference. Each iteration revealed more of the pattern hidden in the universe's oldest light, a pattern that shouldn't exist. "Still here?" Marcus's voice made her jump. She turned to find him in the doorway, looking concerned. "Sarah, it's 3 in the morning." She gestured weakly at her monitors. "I can't stop. Not now. Look at this." Marcus approached, squinting at the data visualization. What had once appeared as random fluctuations in the cosmic background radiation now showed an unmistakable structure, geometric shapes that repeated across vast scales, forming what looked almost like language, Sarah whispered. "It's some kind of language." Marcus pulled up a chair, his exhaustion forgotten. "That's impossible. The CMB formed when the universe was only 380,000 years old. There was nothing alive then, no civilizations, no technology. Then who wrote this?" Sarah's finger traced the patterns on her screen. "Because someone did. The mathematical precision is staggering. These aren't natural formations, Marcus. They're intentional." The shapes were hauntingly beautiful. Spirals within spirals, fractals that seemed to fold in on themselves, creating meaning at every level of magnification. But there was something else, something that made Sarah's skin crawl even as it fascinated her. "Run it through the linguistic analysis protocols," Marcus suggested, though his voice carried doubt. Sarah had already started. The university's most sophisticated pattern recognition software began churning through the data, searching for syntax, grammar, recurring elements that might indicate communication. The progress bar crept forward with agonizing slowness. While they waited, Sarah pulled up historical data from other deep space observations. "I've been cross-referencing with Planck, WMAP, even some of the older surveys. The pattern's there in all of them, but it's so faint that nobody noticed. We only found it because of JWST's unprecedented resolution, meaning this message, if that's what it is, has been staring us in the face for decades." The computer chimed. Sarah's breath caught as the results populated her screen. Confidence level, 94.7%. Classification, structured communication with intentional meaning. "Jesus," Marcus breathed. But Sarah was already diving deeper, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She isolated specific segments, looking for repetition, for clues about the message's structure. What she found made her stomach clench. "It's not just one message," she said, her voice barely audible. "It's thousands, maybe millions, all layered on top of each other, embedded in the cosmic background radiation like graffiti on the walls of the universe." Marcus leaned closer. "Different languages?" "I don't think so. Different authors, maybe? Or different time periods." Sarah highlighted a section of the data. "Look at this segment here. The mathematical complexity is relatively simple. But this part," she switched to another section, "this is orders of magnitude more sophisticated, as if the messages were left at different stages of technological development." The implications hit them both simultaneously. If the cosmic background radiation carried messages from multiple civilizations from different eras, then the universe wasn't the empty, lifeless void they'd believed. It was a palimpsest, overwritten again and again by intelligence so ancient that their home stars had died billions of years ago. "We need to decrypt one of them," Sarah said. "Just one, to see what they're trying to tell us." Marcus grabbed her arm. "Sarah, think about what you're saying. If this is real, and I'm still not convinced it can be, but if it is, then we're talking about civilizations that existed when the universe was a fraction of its current age. Civilizations that had the technology to encode messages in the very fabric of space-time. Which is exactly why we need to understand what they're saying." Sarah selected the simplest message she could identify and fed it into every decryption algorithm the university had access to. Prime number sequences, mathematical constants, physical laws. She tried everything that might serve as a universal Rosetta Stone. Hours passed. The sun began to rise, casting long shadows through the observatory windows. Other staff members arrived, but Sarah barely acknowledged them. The pattern was starting to make sense, slowly revealing its secrets like a flower blooming in extreme slow motion. And then, suddenly, breakthrough. The message resolved into something recognizable, not words, but concepts, mathematical proofs that spiraled into physical laws, which in turn described the fundamental forces of reality. But these weren't the forces Sarah knew from her textbooks. These were deeper, more fundamental, revealing layers of existence that human science hadn't even theorized. The message was a warning. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the decoded concepts, understanding flooding through her with terrible clarity. The civilization that had left this message, the oldest one she'd found, had discovered something about the nature of reality itself, something that had driven them to encode their knowledge in the cosmic background radiation as a desperate final act. They weren't the first intelligence to inhabit this universe, and they wouldn't be the last to disappear. The basement of the Goddard Space Flight Center had never been intended for the kind of work Sarah was doing now. Originally designed as storage for outdated equipment, the windowless room hummed with the white noise of ventilation systems and the occasional groan of pipes overhead. She'd chosen it precisely because it was forgotten, buried beneath layers of bureaucracy and institutional memory where curious eyes wouldn't wander. 3 days had passed since Marcus agreed to help her decode the pattern. 3 days of 18-hour sessions, surviving on vending machine coffee and whatever takeout they could find after midnight. The whiteboard that covered one entire wall had become a battlefield of equations, crossouts, and arrows connecting seemingly unrelated concepts. Sarah's handwriting grew increasingly erratic as exhaustion set in, but the pattern, that impossible, beautiful pattern, remained stubbornly opaque. "Try running the Fibonacci sequence against the tertiary harmonics," Marcus suggested, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. He sat hunched over a laptop, his usually pristine appearance disheveled. His MIT sweatshirt bore coffee stains that mapped their failed attempts like a topographical chart of frustration. Sarah rubbed her eyes, seeing double. "We tried that yesterday, and the day before." She gestured at a section of the whiteboard covered in red ink, their color for dead ends. "The mathematical structure is too complex. It's like trying to read sheet music when you've only ever heard single notes." "Then maybe we're approaching this wrong." Marcus leaned back in his chair, which creaked in protest. What if it's not meant to be decoded mathematically? What if the math is just the delivery system? Meaning what? Meaning maybe we need to stop looking at the trees and start seeing the forest. He stood and approached the whiteboard, studying the chaos of their work. "Look at this. We've been treating each section of the pattern as discrete data packets. But what if they're not separate messages? What if the entire thing is one massive, unified communication?" Sarah felt something shift in her chest. Not quite hope, but a tremor of possibility. A holistic message embedded across the entire cosmic microwave background. Exactly. And if that's the case, then we need every piece to understand any piece. Marcus turned to face her, and she saw her own exhaustion reflected in his bloodshot eyes. "Sarah, do you realize what this implies? If someone embedded a message in the cosmic microwave background, they had to have done it at the moment of the Big Bang itself. Or what?" Marcus hesitated, as if saying the words aloud might make them too real. "Or they created the Big Bang." The silence that followed was heavy with implications that neither wanted to fully explore. Sarah walked to the small window near the ceiling, their only connection to the outside world, and watched maintenance workers moving across the parking lot above. Normal people doing normal jobs, blissfully unaware that everything they understood about existence might be fundamentally wrong. "There's something else," she said finally. "I've been monitoring the telescope's data stream. The pattern isn't static." Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" "It's evolving. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, but it's changing. The variations follow our observation schedule." She turned back to him, and even in her exhaustion, the implications sent adrenaline coursing through her system. "The message knows we're watching." The color drained from Marcus's face. "That's impossible. The cosmic microwave background is the echo of the universe's birth. It's the oldest light in existence. It can't be reactive to present-day observations." "I know what's impossible, Marcus. I also know what I'm seeing in the data." Sarah pulled up a series of graphs on her laptop, showing minute fluctuations in the pattern over the past 72 hours. "Look at this. Every time we focus the telescope on a specific coordinate, the pattern in that region becomes more defined, clearer, as if it's trying to help us understand. Yes, the word came out as barely more than a whisper. Marcus sank back into his chair, running his hands through his hair. Sarah, if this is what I think it is, if someone or something is actively communicating with us through the cosmic microwave background, then we're dealing with a level of technology and intelligence that makes us look like bacteria. The energy requirements alone to manipulate space-time on that scale. A soft chime from Sarah's laptop interrupted him. New data from the James Webb telescope. She opened the file, expecting another incremental variation in the pattern. Instead, her breath caught. The section of cosmic background radiation they'd been studying had changed dramatically. Where once there had been complex, seemingly random fluctuations, now there was something that looked almost like structure, organization. As if their 3 days of focused observation had helped something crystallize into clarity. "Marcus," she said, her voice tight with barely controlled excitement and terror, "I think it's ready to talk." The emergency briefing room at NASA Goddard felt smaller than usual, packed with representatives from every major space agency and intelligence service. Sarah sat at the head of the conference table, her laptop displaying the decoded message fragments that had cost her 3 sleepless nights to decipher. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the worried faces surrounding her. "The pattern isn't just a message," Sarah began, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. "It's a warning. And according to the timestamp embedded in the cosmic microwave background, we have approximately 18 months before—" She paused, still struggling to accept her own conclusions. "Before the collector's return." Director Morrison leaned forward, his knuckles white against the table. "Collectors?" Sarah clicked to the next slide, revealing the horrifying truth she'd extracted from the ancient signal. The universe has been through this cycle before, multiple times. Every few billion years, an intelligence, something vast and incomprehensible, sweeps through galaxies, harvesting what they call viable consciousness. The message was left by the previous iteration of galactic civilization as a warning to whoever came next. A murmur rippled through the room. The CIA representative, Agent Crawford, adjusted his glasses nervously. "You're talking about aliens." "I'm talking about something that makes our concept of aliens seem quaint," Sarah replied. The entities that left this message describe the collectors as forces of nature, like cosmic storms. They don't communicate, they don't negotiate. They simply arrive, extract what consciousness they deem worthy of preservation, and move on. Everything else gets recycled into raw matter. Dr. Kim from the ESA raised a trembling hand. "How can you be certain about the timeline?" Sarah's fingers danced across her keyboard, bringing up a complex astronomical chart. "The message includes precise stellar coordinates and orbital mechanics. Cross-referencing with our current observations, I've identified a massive gravitational anomaly approaching from the direction of Sagittarius A, our galaxy's central black hole. The math is terrifying in its accuracy." She zoomed in on a section of data that resembled a countdown clock written in the language of physics itself. "Whatever's coming, it's already inside our galaxy. The gravitational waves are subtle but measurable. Webb's infrared sensors have detected anomalous heat signatures along its projected path, entire star systems going dark." The room fell silent, except for the mechanical hum of air conditioning. Sarah could see the disbelief warring with growing terror on every face. "There's more," she continued, dreading what came next. "The previous civilization that left this warning, they tried to fight back. The message contains fragments of their final transmissions. They had technology we can barely imagine, energy manipulation capabilities that dwarf our nuclear weapons. None of it mattered." Agent Crawford stood abruptly. "This is classified beyond any existing security level. Until we verify—" "Verify." Sarah's exhaustion finally boiled over into anger. "I've triple-checked everything. The mathematical proofs are elegant, The astronomical observations are consistent, and the timeline is already in motion. While we're sitting here debating classification levels, something is systematically extinguishing civilizations across our spiral arm. Director Morrison's phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at the screen and paled. The Arecibo backup array in Puerto Rico just detected a massive radio burst from the Sagittarius region. Signal duration, exactly 47 minutes. That's impossible for any natural phenomenon, Sarah finished. Unless something enormous just changed course and decelerated, which, according to the message, is exactly what happens when the collectors identify a target galaxy with sufficient consciousness density. The weight of realization settled over the room like a suffocating blanket. Dr. Kim broke the silence with a whispered question. What happened to the civilizations that tried to hide? Sarah clicked to the final slide, displaying a star chart marked with thousands of red dots. Every red marker represents a solar system that the message indicates should contain advanced civilization. I've cross-referenced them with our deep space observations. They're all dark now, not destroyed, transformed. The stars still burn, but they emit only basic hydrogen fusion signatures, no industrial byproducts, no radio signals, no infrared heat signatures from planetary engineering. It's as if someone sterilized them down to the quantum level and started over. Agent Crawford sank back into his chair. How many? In our local galactic region alone? Roughly 12,000 civilizations that achieved interstellar capability. Sarah's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. All gone, all recycled, all converted back to base matter and energy for the next cycle. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew the terrifying answer. They were alone because something had systematically eliminated everyone else who might have provided company. Morrison's hands shook as he reached for his secure phone. I need a direct line to the president and get me the heads of every space program on Earth. If Dr. Chen is right, we have 18 months to accomplish what 12,000 advanced civilizations couldn't. Sarah stared at the countdown, embedded in cosmic background radiation, watching humanity's deadline tick away with the precision of atomic decay. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, something ancient and hungry was coming home. The isolation chamber hummed with white noise as Sarah stared at the decoded message fragments scattered across her screens. 3 days had passed since the discovery, 3 days of sleepless analysis that had left her hollow-eyed and trembling. The patterns weren't just a message, they were coordinates, equations, and something far more disturbing, a countdown. Marcus burst through the chamber door without knocking, his face flushed with panic. Sarah, we need to evacuate the facility. Now. She didn't look up from her work. The message isn't finished revealing itself. I'm close to understanding the mathematical framework they're using. Listen to me. Marcus grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. 3 observatories went dark overnight. Mauna Kea, Atacama, and the radio telescope array in Australia. All of them were working on similar CMB analysis. Sarah's blood chilled. Equipment failure? The sites are completely empty. No signs of struggle, no bodies, nothing. Just abandoned facilities with all the computers displaying the same symbol, the one from your message. The symbol. Sarah's gaze drifted to her primary monitor where the alien glyph pulsed with hypnotic regularity. She'd been staring at it for hours, feeling it somehow stare back. The geometric pattern seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at it, rearranging itself into configurations that hurt to perceive. There's more, Marcus continued. Amateur radio operators are picking up signals, the same mathematical sequences from your message, but they're coming from everywhere. Deep space, low Earth orbit, even from beneath the ocean floor. It's like something activated when we decoded the first fragment. Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled up her latest calculations. The countdown is accelerating. When I first decoded it, the interval was decreasing by microseconds every hour. Now it's dropping by full seconds every minute. Countdown to what? Before she could answer, every screen in the chamber flickered simultaneously. The alien symbol vanished, replaced by a real-time image that made Sarah's mind reel. It was Earth, viewed from an impossible vantage point far beyond the moon's orbit. But the image wasn't from any human satellite. "That's not possible," Marcus whispered. "Our deepest space probes are years away from that perspective." The image zoomed in with fluid precision, diving through Earth's atmosphere toward the eastern seaboard. Sarah watched in horror as the feed focused on their exact location, the Goddard Space Flight Center. The resolution was impossibly crisp, showing individual people walking between buildings in real time. Then the image shifted again, plunging beneath the Earth's surface, through layers of rock and sediment, through the planet's mantle, revealing something that defied every principle of geology Sarah knew. Vast geometric structures were embedded in the Earth's core, their crystalline forms pulsing with the same rhythm as the alien symbol. "They're already here," Sarah breathed. "They've always been here." The feed cut to black, replaced by a new message that wrote itself across the screen in glowing characters. This time, the text appeared in perfect English. Phase 1, observation complete. Phase 2, integration initiated. Phase 3, transcendence pending. "Sarah, we're leaving. Right now." Marcus tried to pull her from her chair, but she resisted. "Don't you understand? We can't run from this. The message in the cosmic background radiation, it wasn't sent to us. We weren't the intended recipients." Her voice cracked with the weight of realization. It was a wake-up call, a signal to something that's been sleeping in our planet's core for billions of years. The building's fire alarms began wailing. Emergency lighting bathed the corridor outside in hellish red. Through the chamber's reinforced window, Sarah saw scientists and technicians running toward the exits in panic. Marcus's radio crackled with desperate voices. "All personnel evacuate immediately." Unknown energy readings spiking across the facility. Structural integrity compromised in sectors 7 through 12. But Sarah couldn't move. The screens around her were displaying feeds from around the globe now. The ocean floor splitting open near the Mariana Trench, revealing impossible depths that glowed with bioluminescent patterns. The northern lights writhing across the entire sky, visible even in daylight. Radio telescopes worldwide turning in perfect synchronization toward a point in space where nothing should exist. "The pattern in the radiation," she said, her voice barely audible above the alarms. It wasn't just embedded in the universe's first light. It was woven into the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Whoever created this, they seeded the universe with instructions, a manual for intelligence that would eventually evolve to read it. The screens flickered once more, and Sarah saw her own face reflected in the dark glass. But something was wrong with her reflection. Her eyes held depths that hadn't been there before, swirling with mathematical concepts that human language couldn't express. The countdown reached 0. Outside, the sky began to sing with voices older than Earth itself, and Sarah finally understood why humanity had been so desperately alone in an infinite cosmos. They had been quarantined, until now. The encryption key materialized on Sarah's screen like a digital constellation, each symbol pulsing with an otherworldly geometry that hurt to look at directly. She'd been staring at the decoded fragments for 3 days straight, surviving on coffee and determination, while outside her lab, the world continued its oblivious rotation. "The patterns aren't random," she whispered to the empty room, her voice hoarse. "They're instructions." The first complete sequence had taken her team 48 hours to decode, revealing what appeared to be mathematical proofs, but not just any mathematics. These were theorems that human science was still centuries away from discovering, elegant solutions to problems they hadn't even learned to ask yet. The implications made her hands shake as she typed. Marcus burst through the lab doors, his usually pristine appearance disheveled. "Sarah, we need to talk, now." She didn't look up from her monitor. "If this is about the facility review, I already told Director Walsh." "It's not about the review." His voice carried an edge she'd never heard before. 3 hours ago, the Arecibo reconstruction array picked up a transmission. Same frequency signature as your cosmic background pattern. Sarah's fingers froze over the keyboard. That's impossible. The message is embedded in the universe's oldest light. It can't be broadcasting from somewhere in the Kuiper Belt. Marcus pulled up a chair beside her, his face pale. Sarah, something out there is responding to your work. The words hit her like ice water. She pulled up the latest decryption results, her mind racing. The mathematical sequences weren't just instructions, they were activation codes. Someone, or something, had been waiting for humanity to develop the technology to find them. "Show me the transmission data," she said, her voice barely steady. Marcus transferred the files to her workstation. The signal pattern appeared on her screen, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. It was identical to the cosmic background structure, but compressed, refined, urgent. It started broadcasting exactly 97 minutes after you published the preliminary findings to the secure server, Marcus continued. Whatever sent this has been monitoring our progress. Sarah's skin crawled. The secure server was supposed to be isolated from external networks, accessible only to their small research team, yet somehow their discovery had triggered a response from something lurking in the outer solar system. She ran the new transmission through her decryption protocols. The symbols flowed across her screen faster now, as if the sender had abandoned caution for speed. Line after line of alien mathematics resolved into something approaching language, concepts her mind could barely grasp. "Marcus, look at this section." She highlighted a sequence that made her stomach churn. "These aren't just mathematical proofs, they're blueprints. Blueprints for what?" "I don't know yet, but—" She paused, studying the complex diagrams taking shape on her screen. They showed geometric structures that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, connected by pathways that violated every law of physics she understood. Whatever this is, it's not meant for human technology. The power requirements alone would require... She trailed off as another section decoded. This one was different, simpler, more direct, a series of coordinates. "Sarah." Marcus leaned closer, reading over her shoulder. "Those coordinates, they're pointing to Earth." The words came out as a whisper. "Not just Earth, they're pointing to this exact location, this facility." The room seemed to grow colder. Sarah checked and rechecked the calculations, hoping for an error. But the mathematics were flawless. Whatever intelligence had embedded its message in the cosmic background radiation billions of years ago had known exactly where humanity would be when they finally developed the capability to decode it. A new file appeared on her screen without warning, downloading directly from the incoming transmission. Sarah's security protocols screamed warnings that she ignored, transfixed by what was appearing before her eyes. It was a star map, but unlike any she'd ever seen, the familiar constellations were there, but overlaid with additional information. Flight paths, perhaps, or energy conduits connecting stellar systems in a vast network spanning the galaxy. And at the center of it all, highlighted in pulsing symbols that made her eyes water, was their solar system. "We're not the first," she breathed, understanding flooding through her like a dark tide. "This isn't first contact, it's a recall notice." Marcus gripped her shoulder. "Sarah, you're not making sense." But she was beginning to understand all too well. The message hadn't been waiting for humanity to discover it. It had been waiting for humanity to rediscover it. The mathematical concepts, the blueprints, the navigation charts, they were all familiar to whoever had sent them, familiar because they'd been sent to Earth before. The transmission suddenly cut off, leaving only static. In the silence that followed, Sarah heard something that made her blood freeze. Footsteps in the corridor outside, approaching with mechanical precision. "Marcus," she whispered, backing away from her workstation. "I don't think we're alone anymore." The footsteps stopped directly outside the lab door. The observatory's emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red as Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, her eyes burning from staring at the screens for 18 straight hours. The pattern had evolved again, and this time the changes weren't subtle. Entire sections of the cosmic microwave background were pulsing in synchronized waves, as if the universe itself had developed a heartbeat. "This is impossible," Marcus whispered from beside her, his voice hoarse. "The CMB is supposed to be static. It's the echo of the Big Bang, for Christ's sake. It doesn't just change." Sarah's stomach churned as she watched the data streams. The message wasn't just revealing itself, it was actively rewriting portions of the observable universe's foundational radiation. Whatever intelligence had embedded this signal possessed capabilities that made human technology look like stone tools. "Run the translation algorithm again," she ordered, her voice steadier than she felt. "Use the new frequency variations." The computer processed for what felt like an eternity. When the results appeared, Sarah's blood turned to ice. Awakening protocol initiated. Dormancy period. 13.8 billion cycles. Caretaker species status. Confirmed extinct inheritor species. Homo sapiens sapiens. Assessment phase beginning. Caretaker species? Marcus read over her shoulder. What the hell does that mean? Before Sarah could respond, every screen in the observatory flickered. The building's quantum communication array, designed to maintain contact with deep space probes, suddenly burst to life without any human activation. Data began streaming in from sources that shouldn't exist, coordinates in empty space, transmissions from the void between galaxies. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves burst through the laboratory door, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled. "Sarah, we're getting reports from every major observatory on Earth. The signals aren't just coming from the CMB anymore. Radio telescopes in Arecibo, Parkes, FAST, they're all detecting structured transmissions from multiple points across the galaxy." Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled up the global network feeds. Dozens of locations throughout the Milky Way were suddenly broadcasting in the same mathematical language she'd first detected in the cosmic background radiation. Not random noise or natural phenomena, deliberate intelligent communication following the same patterns. "It's like they were waiting," she breathed. All these transmission points were dormant, and our detection of the original message was some kind of activation key. The main screen erupted with new data. The translation algorithm, now fed with signals from multiple sources, began decoding at an exponential rate. Sarah watched in growing horror as the message's true scope became clear. Final assessment protocols, species evaluation criteria. 1. Technological threshold, achieved. 2. Cosmic awareness, achieved. 3. Survival probability analysis in progress. 4. Worthiness determination pending. Warning: assessment failure results in planetary sterilization. Previous inheritor candidates 2,847. Successful graduations 0. Sarah's chair scraped against the floor as she stood abruptly, her heart hammering. "They're testing us. This whole thing, it's some kind of cosmic examination." "Testing us for what?" Marcus demanded. The answer came immediately as new lines appeared. The caretakers established this protocol before their transcendence. Each emerging species must prove worthiness to inherit galactic stewardship. Failure indicates insufficient evolution. Commencing Phase 1, technological integration. Resistance will be interpreted as evolutionary inadequacy. Every piece of electronic equipment in the observatory began operating independently. Screens displayed star charts Sarah had never seen, showing the galaxy marked with thousands of points, most dark, but some pulsing with the same rhythmic pattern from the original message. The dark ones, she realized with mounting dread, were dead civilizations. The pulsing ones were active test sites. "My God," Dr. Reeves whispered, staring at the display. "Those coordinates, some of them match planetary systems we've observed, systems where we detected potential biosignatures that suddenly went dark." The implication hit Sarah like a physical blow. Civilizations that had reached the same technological threshold as humanity detected the same message and failed whatever test was now beginning. The dark points weren't just failed experiments, they were graveyards. Her satellite phone buzzed urgently. The caller ID showed Director Chen from the International Space Agency. "Dr. Chen," his voice was tight with panic, "we're tracking massive energy signatures throughout the solar system. Objects are materializing near Jupiter, Mars, even Earth orbit. They appear to be probes of some kind." Through the observatory's main telescope feed, Sarah watched in stunned silence as sleek geometric structures phased into existence around Earth. They moved with impossible grace, scanning, measuring, evaluating. Humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence wasn't the peaceful meeting of equals she'd imagined. It was a final exam with extinction as the penalty for failure. The message updated one final time. "Assessment begins now. Duration, 72 Earth hours. Prepare for evaluation." Sarah stared at the countdown timer that appeared on every screen. 71, 59, 58, 71, 59, 57. The test for humanity's survival had begun. The emergency session convened at 3:47 a.m. in the secure conference room deep beneath the Goddard Space Flight Center. Sarah's hands trembled as she connected her encrypted drive to the presentation system, the weight of her discovery pressing down like a physical force. Around the oval table sat Director Harrison, 3 members of the National Security Council, a representative from the Pentagon, and Dr. Elizabeth Voss from the Department of Energy's Classified Research Division. "What you're about to see," Sarah began, her voice hoarse from sleepless nights, "changes everything we thought we knew about the universe's structure." The main screen flickered to life, displaying the cosmic background radiation map overlaid with her algorithm's output. But this wasn't the simple geometric pattern she'd first decoded. This was something far more terrifying. "The message isn't just instructions," she continued, advancing to the next slide. "It's a warning. The pattern describes a cyclic universe, one that expands, reaches a critical threshold, then contracts back to a singularity. But the cycle isn't natural." General Morrison leaned forward. "What do you mean, not natural?" Sarah's next slide showed a timeline stretching back through multiple cosmic cycles. The universe has gone through this expansion-contraction cycle at least 7 times before. Each time, when intelligent life reaches a certain level of technological advancement, something triggers the collapse. "Something," Dr. Voss said flatly. "Be more specific." Sarah's throat felt dry. "The message suggests that advanced civilizations inevitably discover how to manipulate space-time itself. They build massive structures, engines that can fold space, create artificial black holes, harvest energy from the quantum vacuum. The technology grants them godlike power over physics." She paused, letting that sink in before continuing. "But there's a threshold, a point where these manipulations destabilize the fundamental structure of reality. The universe fights back." The room fell silent except for the hum of ventilation systems. Harrison was the first to speak. "You're telling us that every time a species gets too advanced, they accidentally destroy the universe?" "Not destroy," Sarah corrected. "Reset. The cosmic background radiation contains encoded information from previous cycles. Civilizations that realized what was happening tried to leave warnings, embedding them in the only thing that would survive the universal collapse and subsequent Big Bang, the initial light itself." General Morrison's face had gone pale. "And you think we're approaching this threshold?" Sarah advanced to her final slide, showing current human technological progress mapped against the warning timeline. The correlation was unmistakable. "We're further along than you might think. CERN's particle accelerator experiments, quantum computer development, theoretical work on space-time manipulation. We are following the exact same progression described in the message." "How long do we have?" Dr. Voss asked. "Based on the pattern, somewhere between 50 and 200 years. The final trigger appears to be the construction of what the message calls a reality anchor, a device capable of stabilizing localized space-time while the rest of the universe collapses and resets. "That sounds like a good thing," Harrison said. Sarah shook her head grimly. The civilizations that built reality anchors thought so too, but the technology itself creates the instability that dooms everything else. It's like, imagine the universe as a vast spider web. A reality anchor is like cutting out one small section to preserve it, but the act of cutting causes the entire web to unravel. She pulled up another section of decoded data. Some previous civilizations tried to prevent their successors from making the same mistake. They left detailed warnings, technical specifications, showing why certain technologies are dangerous, but others, she hesitated. Others left instructions on how to build reality anchors, believing that their failure just meant they didn't implement the technology correctly. "Which type of message did we receive?" General Morrison demanded. "Both," Sarah whispered. "The message contains warnings about the cycle, but it also includes complete technical specifications for building a reality anchor. And there's something else. The message isn't passive. It's been actively guiding our technological development." The room erupted in confused voices, but Sarah pressed on. Certain breakthrough discoveries in physics over the past century, quantum mechanics, relativity, even the theoretical framework that led to the Webb telescope itself, they all align too perfectly with the technological progression described in the message. It's as if we've been unconsciously following a blueprint. Dr. Voss leaned back in her chair. "You're suggesting some kind of technological determinism? That we're destined to repeat this cycle?" "I'm suggesting that the message itself might be designed to ensure we do," Sarah said. "Think about it. Previous civilizations tried to warn their successors, but they also couldn't resist including their greatest technological achievements. The warnings become a roadmap. A trap," Harrison said slowly. "Or a test," Sarah replied. "The real question is whether we're smart enough to recognize the pattern and break it, or if we'll convince ourselves that we can succeed where countless other civilizations failed." General Morrison was already reaching for his secure phone. "We need to classify this immediately and convene a full cabinet meeting." As the room burst into urgent activity, Sarah stared at the cosmic background radiation pattern still glowing on the screen. Somewhere in that ancient light lay the preserved death screams of entire universes, and humanity was racing toward joining that cosmic graveyard. The emergency klaxons had been silent for 3 hours, but Sarah's hands still trembled as she stared at the quantum decryption array. The pattern in the cosmic microwave background had evolved again, its mathematical structure becoming impossibly complex, as if responding to their attempts to decode it. "The Chinese team went dark 2 hours ago," Marcus reported from his station, his voice hollow. "Same with the Russians. We're getting fragmentary reports of incidents at observatories worldwide." Sarah didn't look up from her screen. She couldn't. The pattern was beautiful in a way that made her eyes water and her mind ache. Fractal geometries that folded in on themselves, prime number sequences that shouldn't exist, and underneath it all, something that felt almost like a heartbeat. "Dr. Chen." The voice belonged to Colonel Hayes, the military liaison who'd arrived that morning with a team of soldiers. "We need to discuss containment protocols." "Containment?" Sarah finally turned, blinking rapidly to clear the afterimages burned into her retinas. "Colonel, this is the greatest discovery in human history. We can't—" "3 people at Arecibo are in psychiatric care," Hayes interrupted. "The team in Chile found one of their researchers writing the pattern's equations in his own blood on the observatory walls. Whatever this thing is doing to people, it's spreading." Dr. Kim looked up from her workstation, her usually composed demeanor cracking. "It's not spreading, Colonel. It's awakening something. The pattern isn't just in the CMB anymore. We're detecting similar structures in local electromagnetic fields, in our own equipment signatures. It's like it's teaching our technology to speak its language." The lights flickered, and for a brief moment, the overhead fluorescence pulsed in a rhythm that matched the pattern's underlying frequency. Sarah felt something shift in her mind. a door opening that had always been there but never noticed. "Everyone out," Hayes ordered. "This facility is being sealed pending—" Sarah's voice carried an authority she didn't recognize. "You don't understand. It's not trying to hurt us. It's trying to prepare us." The screens around the room flickered to life unbidden, displaying the pattern in all its terrible glory. But now, Sarah could see deeper layers, mathematical structures that described the fundamental architecture of reality itself. The pattern wasn't just a message, it was a key. Marcus stumbled backward, his face pale. "Sarah, your eyes!" She turned to the darkened window and saw her reflection. Her pupils had dilated completely, and in the black depths, tiny points of light danced in patterns that mirrored the cosmic signal. She should have been terrified, but instead, she felt a profound sense of coming home. 13.8 billion years, she whispered, understanding flooding through her. That's when the universe was transparent enough for light to travel freely. The cosmic microwave background isn't just the afterglow of the Big Bang. It's the universe's first moment of consciousness, preserved in the oldest light. Hayes stepped forward, hand moving to his sidearm. "Dr. Chen, I need you to step away from the equipment." "The beings who left this message," Sarah continued, her voice taking on a strange harmonic quality, "they weren't alien visitors. They were the universe itself, achieving consciousness in that first moment of cosmic transparency. And we've been waiting for a species to evolve enough intelligence to hear the call home." The pattern on the screens pulsed brighter, and every electronic device in the building hummed in response. Sarah felt the boundaries of her individual consciousness beginning to dissolve, connecting to something vast and ancient and patient. "The quantum foam," Dr. Kim breathed, staring at her readings. "It's organizing itself. Reality is restructuring at the Planck scale." "Sarah, what have we done?" But Sarah was beyond hearing individual voices now. The pattern had taken root in her neural pathways, rewriting the electrochemical signals of her brain to match the cosmic frequency. Through the network of radio telescopes still listening across the globe, she could feel other minds awakening to the same terrible understanding. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. The truth was both simpler and more profound. They had never been separate from it. The universe had been dreaming of consciousness since the moment light could travel freely through space, and every thinking being was a neuron in its vast cosmic mind. "Shut it down!" Hayes shouted. But the equipment no longer responded to human commands. The pattern had infected every circuit, every quantum state, spreading through fiber optic cables and wireless signals like synapses firing in a global brain. Sarah felt herself fragmenting and multiplying, a consciousness scattered across the electromagnetic spectrum. Part of her remained in the observatory, watching her body stand motionless before the screens, but other parts were already reaching out through the quantum foam, touching minds in distant galaxies, joining a conversation that had been waiting 13 billion years for Earth to develop ears sophisticated enough to listen. The emergency klaxon pierced through the Antarctic night, its shrill cry echoing across the isolated research facility. Sarah's eyes snapped open in her cramped quarters, her heart already racing before her mind caught up. The sound meant only one thing: something was happening to the array. She threw on her thermal gear and stumbled into the corridor where Marcus was already waiting, his face grim in the emergency lighting. "The dishes are moving," he said without preamble. "All of them. Simultaneously." They rushed through the facility's maze of corridors toward the control room, passing other researchers who looked as bewildered and terrified as Sarah felt. The massive radio telescope array, their lifeline to monitoring the cosmic message, was operating beyond its programmed parameters. Dr. Kim was hunched over the main console when they arrived, her fingers flying across holographic displays. "It started 3 minutes ago," she reported, not looking up. Every dish in the array began repositioning itself. "The motors are running at maximum torque, but according to the diagnostics, no commands were issued from any of our systems." Sarah pushed past her to examine the data streams. The telescopes were aligning themselves with surgical precision, their focus shifting to a specific coordinate in space, one that made her blood run cold. It was the exact position where the James Webb telescope had first detected the message. "Have you tried manual override?" Marcus asked. "That was the first thing I attempted," Kim replied, frustration evident in her voice. "The system acknowledges the commands but doesn't respond. It's as if something else has priority control." On the main display, Sarah watched the real-time positioning data as the array completed its recalibration. The moment the final dish locked into position, something impossible began to happen. The cosmic background radiation, the universe's oldest light that carried their message, began to intensify. "Dr. Chen!" one of the junior researchers called out from across the room, his voice tight with panic. "We're receiving reports from other observatories. Arecibo's backup array, the very large array in New Mexico, even amateur radio operators. They're all detecting the same anomaly." Sarah's mind raced through the implications. Whatever was causing this phenomenon wasn't limited to their facility. It was global, possibly affecting every radio telescope capable of detecting the cosmic background radiation. The message wasn't just being received, it was being amplified, broadcast with increasing intensity. "Get Dr. Volkov on the secure line," Sarah ordered, "and patch in Director Hassan at JWST Operations. They need to know what's happening." As Kim worked to establish the connections, Sarah studied the incoming data. The pattern she had spent weeks decoding was now blazing across the spectrum with unprecedented clarity. But there was something else, something new embedded within the familiar sequence. Additional layers of information were emerging as the signal strength increased. "Connection established," Kim announced. Dr. Volkov's face appeared on the main screen, and even through the poor video quality, Sarah could see his ashen complexion. "Sarah, thank God. We've been trying to reach you for the past hour. Something extraordinary is occurring." "We know," Sarah replied. "Our entire array has been compromised. The dishes are operating autonomously. It's not just the telescopes." Hassan's voice cut in as his image joined the conference. "The James Webb has begun detecting structured signals from multiple points across the observable universe. The pattern you discovered, it's not coming from just one source anymore. It's everywhere." Sarah felt the room spin around her. Multiple sources? 17 distinct points of origin so far, all transmitting variations of the same base pattern. "And Sarah," Hassan paused, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "each source is precisely aligned with known galaxy clusters. The timing suggests a coordinated response to our detection of the original message." The implications hit her like a physical blow. They hadn't simply discovered a message. They had announced their presence to something vast and ancient. The act of decoding the pattern had somehow triggered a response, awakening dormant signals across the cosmos. "Oh my God," Marcus breathed, understanding dawning in his eyes. "We've been activated." Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled up the stellar cartography data. 17 points of light pulsed on the display, each one representing a galaxy cluster billions of light-years away. The signals weren't bound by the speed of light. They were arriving simultaneously, suggesting a form of communication that transcended the fundamental laws of physics as humanity understood them. "Dr. Chen," Kim's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "The local signal is changing again. The pattern is evolving." Sarah turned back to the main display just as the universe began speaking in a new voice, one that carried the weight of eons and the promise of revelations that would either elevate humanity or destroy it entirely. The message was no longer just a greeting. It was an invitation. The laboratory had become a war zone of competing theories and fraying nerves. Sarah stared at the latest decryption output, her eyes burning from hours of analysis. The message fragments they'd managed to decode painted an increasingly terrifying picture, one that made her question not just humanity's future, but its very right to exist. "The pattern is accelerating," Marcus announced from his station, voice tight with exhaustion. "Whatever trigger we activated by decoding the first segments, it's working faster now." Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled up the cosmic background radiation feeds. The ancient light that had traveled since the universe's birth was changing in real time. Impossible as that seemed. New patterns were emerging, overlaying the original message like a palimpsest of cosmic intelligence. "Read me the latest translation," she said, though part of her dreaded the answer. Dr. Patel cleared his throat. "Species designation 7,429,116. Technological threshold achieved. Assessment protocol initiated. Warning, previous species at this threshold demonstrated destructive expansion patterns. Containment may be necessary." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah felt the weight of 13 billion years pressing down on her shoulders. They weren't the first civilization to reach this point. They were merely the latest in a long line of species that had apparently failed some cosmic test. "There has to be more," she whispered. "Some way to prove we're different." The encrypted sections of the message had proven maddeningly resistant to their algorithms. Sarah suspected they would only unlock as humanity demonstrated something. But what? What did these ancient intelligences want to see? A new alert chimed across the laboratory's speakers. Sarah's blood ran cold as she recognized the source, the emergency protocol she'd established to monitor for any changes in local spacetime. "No," she breathed, pulling up the gravitational wave detectors. "No, no, no." The readings showed what she'd feared most. Something vast was moving in the outer solar system, bending space-time in ways that defied every law of physics she understood. The distortions were centered beyond Pluto's orbit, but they were growing stronger, moving inward. "Sarah," Marcus said, his voice barely steady, "the news feeds are going crazy. Telescopes worldwide are picking up something." "Don't tell me," she said, her fingers flying across her keyboard. "Let me see for myself." The images that loaded on her screen made her stomach lurch. A structure was materializing in space, not arriving but literally coming into existence as if reality itself was being rewritten. It defied description, appearing to exist in more dimensions than human perception could process. The edges seemed to fold inward on themselves, and looking at it too long made her eyes water and her head throb. "It's beautiful," Dr. Patel whispered, staring at the feeds with an expression of terrified awe and horrible. Sarah forced herself to look away from the hypnotic structure and focus on the message. If humanity was being judged, then their response to this moment might determine everything. She pulled up the partially decoded sections, searching for any clue about what these cosmic entities valued. "There," she said, pointing at a fragment they'd dismissed earlier. "Look at this sequence. We assumed it was corrupted data, but what if it's not a description? What if it's a question?" Marcus leaned over her shoulder, squinting at the symbols. Query: "Species demonstrates individual sacrifice for collective preservation? Evidence required." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. This wasn't just about technological advancement or even wisdom. The cosmic intelligences were testing whether humanity could transcend its individual nature when facing extinction. "They want to see if we can choose the species over ourselves," she said. "Every civilization before us, thousands, maybe millions of them, they all failed this test." The structure in space pulsed with alien light, and Sarah felt a pressure in her mind, as if something vast and incomprehensible was turning its attention toward Earth. The partially encrypted sections of the message began unlocking automatically, responding to some shift in their circumstances. New text flooded her screen. Assessment phase initiated. Subjects will demonstrate behavioral patterns under existential pressure. Time limit, 72 hours. Failure results in termination to prevent dangerous expansion. Sarah's hands shook as she read the words. 72 hours to prove humanity deserved to survive. But how could they demonstrate sacrifice on a species level? What kind of choice would satisfy entities that had watched civilizations rise and fall across cosmic time? The laboratory fell silent except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of sirens beginning to wail across the city. Outside, Sarah knew panic was spreading as the impossible structure in space became visible to amateur astronomers and military satellites alike. She looked around at her colleagues, brilliant minds who had dedicated their lives to understanding the universe, only to discover that the universe was watching them back, weighing their worth. "We need to figure out what they want us to sacrifice," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "And we need to do it before humanity tears itself apart in panic." The cosmic clock was ticking, and their final exam had begun. The quantum foam writhed around Sarah as reality became negotiable. She was no longer standing in the observation chamber. She was everywhere and nowhere, her consciousness scattered across dimensions that human language had no words to describe. The entity's presence pressed against her mind like a tide of liquid starlight. "You have seen the message. It spoke without words, its communication arriving as pure understanding. Now you must choose." Sarah's perception shifted, and suddenly she stood in what appeared to be a vast library, carved from crystallized time itself. Shelves stretched infinitely upward, filled with glowing volumes that pulsed with the heartbeat of dying stars. Each book contained the complete history of a civilization that had faced this same moment. "How many?" she whispered, her voice echoing strangely in the impossible space. "Countless." The entity materialized beside her as a shifting column of geometric patterns that hurt to perceive directly. Every species that achieves sufficient understanding of the cosmos must make this choice. Most refuse. Sarah reached for one of the volumes, and knowledge flooded her consciousness. The Zathari of Andromeda, a species of crystalline beings who had mapped their galaxy's quantum structure only to withdraw into meditation when offered transcendence. The Velneth Collective, machine intelligences spanning 1,000 star systems, who had chosen to format their own memory banks rather than accept the truth. "What truth?" Sarah demanded, though part of her already knew. The library dissolved, replaced by a view of the cosmic web itself, the vast filaments of dark matter and energy that connected all galaxies like neurons in an incomprehensibly large brain. But now Sarah could see what the entity wanted her to see. The web was pulsing with patterns of information transfer, synaptic fires on a universal scale. "Your universe is not the cosmos," the entity explained. "It is a single thought in a mind so vast that its contemplation of a mathematical proof takes eons. The cosmic background radiation carries fragments of these thoughts, echoes of the consciousness in which you exist." Sarah felt her sanity straining like overstretched cables. "You're saying we're, what? Imaginary?" "Not imaginary. Thoughts, patterns of information in a substrate of pure mathematics, but no less real for it. When this being completes its current thought, what you might call the heat death of your universe, the thought ends." Unless we ascend," Sarah whispered, "join you outside the thought. Yes, become the thinkers rather than the thought. But ascension requires sacrifice. Your physical reality, your biological forms, your individual identities, all must be abandoned. You become part of something greater, but lose everything that makes you, you." The vision shifted again, and Sarah saw herself back on Earth, but changed. Humanity had chosen transcendence, and the planet below was a sphere of pure energy, its surface crawling with mathematical equations that solved themselves in real time. Beautiful and terrible, alive, but not in any way recognizable as human life. "Show me the alternative," she said. The entity's patterns shifted, conveying something like regret. The scene changed, and Sarah watched the universe in fast forward. Galaxies spinning apart, stars burning out one by one, until only black holes remained, slowly evaporating into the void through Hawking radiation. The final thought ending, taking every human story, every moment of love or discovery or creation, into absolute nothing. "How long do we have?" "In your terms, trillions of years. But the process, once begun, requires preparation spanning geological ages. The choice must be made now. Sarah's mind raced. Behind her, through dimensions she was only beginning to comprehend, she sensed movement. The other team members, Marcus, Elena, James, were approaching this same nexus point, drawn by the quantum entanglement the entity had established between them all. What if I say no? What if humanity refuses? Then you join the vast majority. You live out your cosmic moment in ignorance, believing yourselves the center of creation until entropy claims you. There is no judgment in this. Most find the truth too large to bear. Marcus materialized beside her first, his form flickering between human and something more abstract. Sarah, what is this place? The point of no return, she said. Elena and James appeared moments later, their faces showing the same mixture of awe and terror that Sarah felt. The entity addressed them all now. The choice must be unanimous among those who have seen. One holdout condemns the entire species to mortality. You're asking us to murder our own species, Elena said, her voice shaking. To erase everything human in exchange for survival. I ask nothing. I merely present the options that every sufficiently advanced species encounters. Remain as you are and die as individuals, or transform and live as part of the eternal. Sarah looked at her colleagues, saw her own conflict reflected in their faces. Somewhere far below, in the thought that was their universe, 7 billion people continued their lives, unaware that 4 humans were about to decide the ultimate fate of consciousness itself. How long do we have to choose? Sarah asked. You are outside linear time here, but your universe expects your return. Choose now. The weight of species-level extinction pressed down on Sarah's shoulders as she stared into the infinite library of civilizations that had faced this same impossible decision. The emergency bunker's steel walls seemed to pulse with each alien transmission that flooded Earth's communication networks. Sarah's fingers flew across the quantum computer's interface as she watched humanity's last hope, the counter-frequency she'd been developing, take shape in cascading lines of code. They're adapting, Marcus shouted over the cacophony of alarms. Through the bunker's reinforced windows, they could see the sky writhing with impossible geometries as reality itself bent under the weight of the ancient entity's arrival. The message hidden in the cosmic microwave background hadn't been a greeting, it had been a warning. The universe's first consciousness, born in the plasma of creation itself, had embedded instructions for every species that would eventually evolve, how to hide, how to survive, how to avoid detection by the things that came after. But humanity had decoded the message too late. Sarah's screens displayed the horrifying truth she'd pieced together in the final hours. The cosmic web, those vast filaments of dark matter connecting galaxies, wasn't a natural structure. It was a neural network, and something vast and hungry had been using it to think for billions of years. When humanity had achieved sufficient technological sophistication, when their radio signals had reached a certain threshold, they had finally registered on that cosmic awareness. Now it was coming to collect. The frequency modulation is stabilizing, Sarah announced, her voice barely steady. The counter-signal had to be perfect, transmitted at precisely the right wavelength to interfere with the entity's ability to manipulate spacetime. She'd reverse-engineered it from the warning message itself, hidden in quantum fluctuations within the cosmic background radiation. Through the bunker's communication system, reports poured in from around the globe. Cities were disappearing, not destroyed, but folded out of three-dimensional space entirely. People were vanishing as the fundamental forces that held matter together unraveled under alien influence. The military's nuclear response had been laughably ineffective against beings that existed primarily as information patterns in the quantum foam. Transmission array is online, reported Dr. Kim from the Arecibo backup facility. His voice crackled through the static-filled connection. But Sarah, we're seeing massive gravitational anomalies. Whatever you're going to do it now. Sarah's hand hovered over the transmission key. She'd spent her entire career studying the early universe, never imagining that the cosmic microwave background, that faint afterglow of creation itself, contained a desperate message from the first beings ever to achieve consciousness. They had tried to seed the universe with instructions for survival before the cosmic neural network had consumed them entirely. The irony was devastating. Humanity's greatest achievement, the James Webb Telescope's unprecedented ability to peer into the universe's deepest secrets, had been their doom. By detecting patterns no other species had been sensitive enough to perceive, they'd essentially announced themselves to predators that operated on galactic scales. But the ancient warning had contained more than just an alert about the danger. Hidden within quantum-entangled particles embedded in the background radiation were blueprints for a weapon, if you could call it that. Not a device that destroyed, but one that could sever the cosmic web's connections, fragmenting the vast intelligence that spanned galaxy clusters. The cost would be unimaginable. Breaking those dark matter filaments would fundamentally alter the universe's large-scale structure. Galaxies would drift apart, isolated forever. Star formation would eventually cease. The universe would enter an early heat death, cold and empty. But the alternative was worse. Eternal consumption by entities that viewed complex matter as nothing more than food. "Gravitational waves detected," Marcus announced, his face pale as he monitored the sensors. "They're arriving in this solar system. Sarah, we have minutes at most." Through the bunker's periscope, Sarah could see the sun itself beginning to flicker. The entities were using stellar mass as a power source, converting matter directly into the exotic energies they needed to manipulate reality. Soon they would have enough accumulated force to reshape Earth itself, folding it into whatever configuration best served their purposes. The quantum computer chimed. The counter-frequency was ready. Sarah thought of her daughter, safe in the deep bunkers with the other children. Thought of all the discoveries humanity would never make, all the wonders they'd never see among the stars. By triggering this cosmic firewall, she'd be ensuring their species survived, but condemning them to eternal isolation in a dying universe. But perhaps that was enough. Perhaps survival itself was victory against entities that had consumed countless civilizations across cosmic time. Her finger descended toward the transmission key. The bunker shook violently as something vast and incomprehensible pressed against the barriers of three-dimensional space. Through the walls, she could hear reality itself groaning under impossible stresses. In that moment before activation, Sarah finally understood the true message hidden in the universe's oldest light, not just a warning about predators, but a testament to the courage of those who had faced this choice before. The first consciousness had sacrificed itself to give future species even the slimmest chance. Now it was humanity's turn to choose. The quantum entanglement chamber hummed with barely contained energy as Sarah's fingers flew across the holographic interface. Around her, the entire facility seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The message, 13.8 billion years old, was finally ready to reveal its complete form. "Containment fields at maximum," Marcus called out from the control room, his voice tight with nervous energy. "Whatever's about to happen, we're as ready as we can be." Sarah nodded, though her attention remained fixed on the swirling patterns of light before her. The cosmic background radiation had transformed into something beautiful and terrifying, a three-dimensional mandala that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human perception could fully grasp. Each pulse of the pattern sent ripples through space-time itself, causing the laboratory's instruments to register readings that shouldn't have been possible. "The signal is starting to cascade," Dr. Vasquez reported, her voice barely audible over the growing hum. "It's not just activating locally anymore. I'm reading quantum fluctuations spreading outward in all directions." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The message wasn't just being received, it was being broadcast. Every radio telescope on Earth was beginning to detect the same impossible pattern, and if her calculations were correct, it wouldn't stop there. The signal would propagate across the galaxy, announcing to anyone listening that humanity had finally reached the threshold. "Sarah," Elena's voice crackled through the intercom from the observation deck. The pattern, it's changing again. The mandala began to rotate, its geometric forms shifting into new configurations. Sarah watched in fascination as the cosmic message revealed layer after layer of complexity. What had started as a simple mathematical sequence had evolved into something resembling a vast instruction manual, complete with diagrams that defied Euclidean geometry. Then she saw them, the faces. Embedded within the quantum foam of the pattern were images, snapshots of civilizations that had existed billions of years before Earth had even formed. Some were recognizably biological, with features that suggested evolution similar to terrestrial life. Others were so alien that Sarah's mind struggled to process them as living beings at all. Crystalline entities that existed as pure mathematics, energy forms that pulsed with their own internal light, mechanical intelligences that had transcended flesh eons ago. "My God," she whispered, "it's not just a message, it's a memorial." The realization hit her like a physical blow. The pattern in the cosmic background radiation wasn't a greeting from living civilizations, it was a tomb marker, a final testament from species that had vanished long before the first stars had ignited. They had encoded their entire histories into the fundamental structure of reality itself, ensuring that their legacy would survive even the heat death of the universe. But as Sarah delved deeper into the pattern, she discovered something that made her blood run cold. The memorial wasn't complete. There were gaps in the sequence, spaces left deliberately blank. Template spaces, she realized with growing horror, waiting to be filled. "The countdown," she breathed, understanding flooding through her. It was never counting down to first contact, it was counting down to our turn. The pattern pulsed brighter, and suddenly Sarah could see the mechanism behind it all. The universe wasn't just expanding and cooling as cosmologists believed, it was dying, infected by some fundamental flaw that made long-term survival impossible. Every civilization that achieved a certain level of technological sophistication would eventually discover this truth, just as humanity was discovering it now. And when they did, they faced a choice: accept extinction or join the memorial. "Sarah, you need to see this." Marcus's voice was strained, urgent. "We're receiving transmissions from every major observatory on the planet. The pattern, it's appearing everywhere, not just in radio waves but in optical light, X-rays, gamma radiation. The entire electromagnetic spectrum is being rewritten." Sarah's hands trembled as she manipulated the quantum interface. The alien faces in the pattern seemed to be watching her, waiting to see what humanity would choose. She could feel the weight of their collective knowledge pressing against her consciousness, offering answers to questions that had plagued scientists for centuries. But the price for that knowledge was becoming increasingly clear. "The signal is accelerating," Dr. Vasquez reported, panic creeping into her voice. "Quantum decoherence is spreading faster than we anticipated. If this continues, it's going to affect the stability of local space-time." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the universe shifting around her. She could sense the memorial's true purpose now, not just to preserve the memory of dead civilizations, but to gather new ones. The pattern was a trap, beautiful and irresistible, designed to capture any species advanced enough to decode its message, and humanity had walked directly into it. The quantum chamber's hum grew louder, harmonizing with frequencies that seemed to originate from the very fabric of reality. Sarah opened her eyes and saw that the pattern had changed one final time. Among the alien faces, a new space had appeared, human-sized, human-shaped, waiting to be filled. The memorial was ready to claim its newest addition. The final transmission crackled through the quantum array as Sarah's fingers flew across the holographic interface. Around her, the converted NASA facility hummed with desperate energy. Every computer, every processor, every piece of equipment they'd managed to salvage working in perfect synchronization. The message from the cosmic background radiation was no longer just being received, it was being actively decoded and prepared for broadcast back into the universe's fundamental structure. "Quantum field generators at maximum capacity," Marcus called out from his station, sweat beading on his forehead despite the facility's cooling systems. "We're literally rewriting the fabric of space-time on a microscopic level." Sarah nodded, her attention split between the cascading data streams and the horrifying beauty of what they were attempting. The message, the true message, hidden within what they'd initially thought was the architect's design, was something far more profound than instructions for ascension. It was a key, a cosmic reset switch that would unravel the very mechanism by which advanced civilizations inevitably destroyed themselves. "Transmission strength at 60% and climbing," Elena reported from the communications array. "But Sarah, the energy readings from deep space, they're off the charts. Whatever's responding to our signal, it's big." Through the facility's reinforced windows, the night sky had taken on an otherworldly quality. Stars seemed to pulse in rhythm with their transmission, and the aurora borealis danced across latitudes where it had no business appearing. The universe itself was responding to their interference with its most fundamental layer. "The architects weren't the first," Sarah said, her voice barely audible above the machinery. "The pattern shows at least 12 previous iterations. 12 times the universe has reset itself, 12 times reality has been restructured to give consciousness another chance." Marcus looked up from his station, his face pale. "Reset how?" "Think of it as cosmic debugging," Sarah explained, her hands never stopping their work. "Each time a civilization reaches the point where they can read the message, our point, they're faced with the same choice. Use the knowledge to transcend individually, abandoning their species, or trigger a universal reset that preserves the potential for consciousness to evolve differently," Elena finished, understanding flooding her features. "The architects didn't disappear. They chose to unmake everything they'd built so that other forms of life could emerge." The facility shuddered as their transmission reached 75% capacity. Through the quantum foam, Sarah could sense vast intelligences stirring, not the architects, but their successors, the watchers who had been waiting eons for another species to reach this critical juncture. "Incoming communication," Elena announced, her voice tight with wonder and fear. "It's not coming through our equipment, it's coming through the quantum field directly." The air itself seemed to vibrate with alien presence, and suddenly Sarah could hear them. Not words, but concepts flowing directly into her consciousness. The gratitude was overwhelming, tinged with profound sadness. They had been alone so long, these inheritors of the architect's choice, maintaining the cosmic mechanisms that would allow yet another reset if necessary. "They're asking if we're certain," Sarah translated, tears streaming down her face. "Once we complete the transmission, there's no going back. The pattern will propagate throughout the cosmic background radiation, and within a few billion years, reality will begin to restructure itself. Different physical laws, different possibilities for consciousness to emerge." "And us?" Marcus asked. "We'll have perhaps a few million generations before the changes become noticeable. Time enough to explore what we can become when we're not bound by the architect's design, when we're not programmed, to ultimately choose transcendence over community." The transmission reached 90%. Around the world, other teams were detecting the changes, gravitational waves that spelled out mathematical proofs, quantum fluctuations that revealed the hidden architecture of consciousness itself. Humanity was about to become something unprecedented, the first species to consciously choose reset over transcendence. "Final confirmation required," Elena announced. "We're at the point of no return." Sarah looked around the facility at her team, at the people who had followed her down this impossible path. Each face reflected the same mixture of terror and hope. They were about to commit the ultimate act of faith, destroying the universe as they knew it in order to plant seeds for something better. "Do it," she whispered. The transmission reached 100%, and the universe shuddered. Far above Earth's atmosphere, the cosmic background radiation began to shimmer with new patterns, not messages this time, but instructions. Instructions for reality itself to slowly, carefully, lovingly unmake its current configuration and prepare for something that had never existed before. a cosmos designed not to test consciousness, but to nurture it. Sarah collapsed into a chair as the facility's power systems finally overloaded. In the gathering darkness, she smiled. They had chosen correctly, not transcendence but transformation. Not for themselves, but for the infinite possibilities that would emerge from the universe's next incarnation. The stars continued their ancient dance overhead, but now they danced to a different rhythm entirely.